Good morning, everyone, and thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your day to join us today here for our MetroTex Commercial Real Estate Forum. I am very excited today to bring you two really amazing local speakers to discuss activity in the commercial environment with COVID-19. As we all know, there's been a lot of changes recently, and having two professionals very in touch with that impact is just amazing. That we have the opportunity to hear some feedback from two outstanding individuals. I'd like to take a couple minutes and introduce them. First, I'd like to say hello and good morning to John Stevenson. He is VP and the project director of Group. And then I would also like to introduce Peter S. Brodsky, who is the owner of Reimagine Redbird. And so many of us here, especially anybody local and being raised in the DFW area, are very, very excited to see the changes coming up with Redbird as well. So I know we're all excited to hear about the upcoming changes there. So we'll start out with some basic questions for both of you, if you don't mind here. So let me switch over my other screen. So sorry, everybody. So we will start with John, if you don't mind. Please tell us about your firm and one or two of your current projects.
Definitely. So first of all, I just want to say thank you again to MetroTex for giving this opportunity to speak with you all today. And Erica, just as you said, it's an honor to hear from Peter today about what's going on at the Redbird Mall. That'll be wonderful to hear about. Just some general information. I'm vice president of the projects group, and just a quick warning here. Prior to coming to the projects group, I am a professional engineer. That's what I did for several years beforehand. So as we go through some of these, and there's some questions that come up, the nerdiness might show through a little bit. So just be prepared for that. But the projects group is a Fort Worth-based, nationwide owners project management firm. And so really what that means is that if you've got a vision for a project and you've got the money, I don't have any money, then you hire us and we build the team to make that vision a reality. So we hire the architects, the engineers, contractors, the specialty consultants, and then manage that whole team for you so that you can be focusing on your day-to-day operations, and then we can be focusing on the future, obviously working with you to make that a reality. So we've delivered over $3 billion in development since 2002, and we've been working in this space since before 2002, but from around the mid-1980s until that time, we were in-house for Sundance Square in Fort Worth. So from the master plan to the buildings themselves, the tenant finish out, all of that was what we were able to touch. And so we ended up working with a lot of different product types. And then in the mid-1990s, we built Bass Hall, which is the Performing Arts Center in downtown Fort Worth. And that was our first kind of cultural project that ended up carrying us across the nation, really, to do that type of work. And we also just delivered the Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, which opened in the fall. And so had the Fort Worth Stock Show there, and now there are obviously a lot of events that were supposed to be there now that have been delayed. But we've been able to really touch a lot of different market sectors, office space, apartments, hotel rooms, multifamily, high net worth residences, food and beverage spaces. I mean, really a lot of different product types across the country. Right now, what we're working on, or what I'm working on in particular, related to this organization, I'm leading the build to suit headquarters for MetroTex right now. Then I've also got another build to suit office building that we're working on, a community center for a Native American tribe in California, a couple private residences, a youth orchestra facility, and then a series of operations and maintenance projects for a few museums. And one other project that I think is particularly profound and relevant today is the Transform 1012 North Main project. And that entails redeveloping what's believed to be the only remaining Ku Klux Klan structure still in the country, and then working with representatives of cultural groups that have been historically targeted by the KKK. We're working with them to change that around 22,000 square foot floor plate, 3-story building of hate and violence, turning that into a place of healing and conversation. I just wanted to mention that project because while it does cross several different market sectors, it's also very relevant to the conversations that we're hearing in the world today. So, bit of a long intro, but that's about me and about the projects group.
Absolutely. So where's the location of the structure that's being repurposed?
So it's on Main Street. It's just north of downtown Fort Worth. It's a very large, imposing brick building built in the 1920s, and it's served a couple of different, warehousing purposes, random things over the years. But it's around the area that'll become Panther Island, but it's not technically in the Panther Island development.
Exciting. Okay. I look forward to see what occurs there. That's amazing. I like that. Awesome. Peter S. Brodsky, I am excited to hear what you have to tell us. So please tell us about yourself, your firm, and then of course your current projects.
Well, I want to echo John's thanks for the opportunity, and listening to the list of projects that you're feeling a little underutilized here, since I'm just working on one. So I'm originally from New York. I'm not a real estate developer by background. This is actually my first commercial real estate project, and probably my last. It's going to be a 15 to 20 year project, I think. Essentially, the entire motivation and thesis behind investment is that the southern half of the city of Dallas has long been not just neglected, but really for capital. And it's the historically African American part of the city. It is increasingly skewing Hispanic. That history is important because the city really intentionally grew north and not south. And the result of that is that while there are very different economics throughout southern Dallas, it's not a uniformly poor area by any means. How it's depicted. The amenities that you find even in the well-to-do parts of the city really are terrible. There's no sit-down restaurants. There's low-quality retail. There's not nearly enough medical facilities provided. I think I've never verified this, but order of magnitude, about 5% of the city's office buildings office space is located in southern Dallas, and 95% Dallas. And that's despite the fact that southern Dallas is 54% of the land mass of the city and population. So what's ended up happening, I mean, there's really several different goals here. Dallas economics perspective, the southern half of the city must be developed, because what happened long ago is that we were in the north. And so then people started going to Plano, then Frisco, McKinney, Allen, now Prosper, part of the city of Dallas tax base, or the county of Dallas. And so that policy has really come back to bite Dallas in the butt. Is just that there's a totally unaddressed market there. A lot of people who choose to live in southern Dallas. It's where they grew up. It's where their families live. It's where their churches are. It's more physically beautiful than North Dallas, whatever the reason, and they want amenities. And so the purpose of buying an old mall was not because we believed that big box retail was going to make a big rebound. Quite the opposite. It was really that it's a very attractive piece of property at the intersection of two major highways within the city of Dallas, very, very undervalued from a price perspective, and a lot of real estate. And so what we're doing is repurposing the buildings into uses that are needed and wanted today. And the hallmark, the sort of the North Star, if you will, of the development is quality. Everything we're doing there must meet the same bar that it would be met if it were located in Preston Hollow or Highland Park. That's what people in the community want. There's more than plenty of purchasing power, and just as a matter of fundamental respect and human dignity, the product that we're going to deliver and really are in the process of delivering now is going to be best in class, so that people feel welcome. And that's not just a sort of a social mission, although it is that is a good ancillary benefit. It's a real economic, is that when people feel that way, guess what? They come more often and they choose to spend their dollars there. And so that's what we're doing, and it encompasses from restaurants to retail to entertainment to office to medical to hotel to apartments, green spaces, you name it. We're doing it at Redbird.
That is outstanding. I am just my 2 cents, and I know this is the sentiment of many of us. We are very excited in the real estate community to see the transition that will occur from this project. I know that there are many of us who have heard about it for quite a while, and to know that we've got such an outstanding plan ahead for that section of the city is something that just it brings us like unbelievable joy, not just for the opportunity for the growth, but of course for the surrounding real estate, the residential real estate surrounding that area. It will make such an impact, a community that is tremendous, which I know that you are well aware of. So I want to thank you kind of for spearheading that and bringing this to life and breathing life into that. And not been an easy feat, and I know that it will not be an easy one to complete, but I really appreciate all that you have done and the plans that you have.
Well, I appreciate that. I always joke, I've been an investor for 25 years, not in real estate, but I've never been thanked so much for trying to make a profit. I mean, I do really care about the community, and if I didn't think there was a way to make money here doing it positively, I wouldn't. But there's a real value here, and I always want to emphasize that, because I don't want people to think that this philanthropic effort. This is an investment on which I and my investors intend to get an attractive return, and I emphasize that because if everyone thinks it's philanthropy, this will be the first and last development. There's a real economic case to be made, and it is a great fallacy that the two ways to make money in Southern Dallas are either put in, lower quality amenities, warehousing, payday lending, sort of stuff like that, or orient you're trying to attract North Dallas residents to come visit Southern Dallas. That would be the Trinity Golf Club, Bishop Arts, Trinity. That's really not true. I mean, those are, people have made money that way, but I think there's a much bigger long-term opportunity if you are there who want to be there and just want to be able to go get Starbucks in the morning like everybody else.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that you realize that most of us in real estate realize the ripple effect of your project. So I think it's outstanding. Obviously, you make a profit, but you, in the process of that, you're improving the overall area for the better, which is an exciting thing.
We hope catalytic.
Absolutely. So you kind of answered my second question, which is which sectors are you primarily working in, which you kind of already addressed for me there, Peter. So John, what sectors do you feel that your organization primarily works in? Would you consider it, you've kind of mentioned a couple things, would you mainly say it's retail, industrial, office, or mixed use? What do you feel that your primary?
Yeah, so I like to say that we'll do anything for anybody. So we've kind of touched every single one of those sectors at one point or another, but primarily I'd say it's mixed use commercial work, at least in the commercial space. And so right now we've got a few of those build-to-suit office spaces that I mentioned earlier, and those are still moving forward. But kind of coming back to COVID, food and beverage, retail, those projects for us aren't really moving too much right now. And then a lot of our cultural projects. So the Dr. Phillips Center for Performing Arts in Orlando, that's still rolling. Rothko Chapel in Houston, that's still moving forward. And there are a few others as well. But really, it's kind of the office projects that are still moving forward right now.
Okay. And I'd like to encourage anybody, if anyone has a question or a comment, we ask that you, definitely send those questions in. Heather, my vice chair, is going to be actually asking your questions that you see. Have any questions as of right now?
No, not as of now.
Okay, perfect. We will move forward. John, if you can kind of elaborate, when 2020 started, what did you see in the business horizon? Were you concerned about a possible recession?
Well, I can tell you that we did not see this on the horizon. COVID-19 was certainly not something we expected, but every election year, that's a year that we pay a bit of extra attention to what we're factoring in for cost escalation and schedule contingency. And so even before the year started, we had kind of added a little bit of that safety factor in because of the election. And you've seen some of that come up with tariffs in the marketplace. And with so many of our projects drawing materials from abroad, and I think Peter would confirm it's kind of the norm in a lot of projects today, we'd already been paying attention to COVID-19 probably as late as, or rather as early as late December 2019. And prior to all of that, we'd seen that the construction industry was getting pretty booked. The construction managers that we might want to work with, the design partners we might want to work with, all sort of saying, hey, we're pretty full, we can't take on more work. And it's great that they had that backlog, and I pray. But because there were so many projects getting turned down prior to 2020, we could tell that the market was getting a little bit sad. While we're not developers in the conventional sense, we try to stay unbiased, so we don't use our capital or our partners' capital on projects. So markets aren't something that we pay a tremendous amount of attention to always, but we had seen that 2019 was a very good year. We've got a lot of projects that are nonprofit and very donor driven. And so when the market is doing well, the stock market's doing well, donors are trying to find ways to give back to their community while still reducing that tax liability. And so we know that some of those projects stood up. And if we're paying attention to when a recession might occur, those projects can end up seeing some efficiencies. If they've already got their funding set aside, they might lock in a construction manager, and then they could potentially get their same program for less money if costs go down, or they might be able to expand the goals of the project. So for all those reasons, we've been paying attention, a little bit extra attention to what might happen in 2020, but none of us had a crystal ball and thought that there would be a pandemic.
Gotcha. So I would love to hear from you, Peter. What did you see on the business horizon, and were you concerned about a recession with the start of 2020?
I mean, it's funny. We actually did predict the COVID. Just kidding. Um, the answer is, I thought that there was a recession. We thought that a recession would be coming in the next couple of years because of the business cycle. And so, good times don't last forever, but certainly did not think it was going to be showing certainly nothing like this. The thing you have to remember, though, is that Redbird is a little bit in that, first of all, we were already essentially in a depression. I mean, if you're looking at big box retails, it was terrible in 2018. It was worse in 2019, and we didn't think it was going to be getting any better in 2020. Segment of the economy hasn't been thriving. And that was actually very healthy for us to go through, because it forced what we were going to be doing. Oh, Macy's closed in 2017. We better figure out what to do with that building. Sears closed in we better figure out what to do with that building, and it's not going to be retail. So that was helpful. The other thing is that, as I described earlier, this area is so weighted with every kind of amenity that even if things were beginning to slow down, you can still make a very strong argument to tenants, to retailers, that is needed in this area. And so, that absolutely does not apply to COVID, where the brakes are being slammed on and nobody's thinking about expanding right now. But we were less worried about a recession because we felt like we'd already been through the worst. We already knew what was coming with retail, and we felt like we had in some ways, a disadvantage into an advantage, which is, there's no amenities here, but hey, that means, we were able to convince Starbucks that they should open here, because it's the only Starbucks in the 200 square miles of southern Dallas. That's a lot more of an attractive proposition than the 90th Starbucks within 5 minutes of my house in North Dallas.
Right. How do you see the COVID-19 issue affecting development in your sector, in your business sector?
Well, I think businesses hate uncertainty, and there's a huge amount of uncertainty. For us, our biggest tenants we've signed recently are public health systems. Parkland and UT Southwestern are taking, between the two of them, about 200,000 square feet of space. If there's one growth industry given the COVID-19 pandemic, I think it's public health. But I think everything's on hold, and I know in some ways the closures. The closing of everything for 6 weeks was helpful because construction was deemed to be essential, and we were able to really, really go fast on construction because there was no one else on site. The problem is that runs out after a while, because if you don't have any new tenants wanting to sign leases, you're not going to have any new construction. And what we're seeing from the firms we work with on the architecture, engineering, construction side is that their pipelines are empty, and they're beginning to have to do reductions in force in order to stay solvent. And so I think it's going to be tough for a while, until ultimately it's the tenants that are going to drive this. When they want to expand, everything will boom again. So I think we're going to be in for a bit of a pause.
Fantastic answer. John, same question to you. How do you see COVID-19 issues affecting development in your business sectors?
Yeah, so kind of similar to what Peter was saying, this is very much a process. And, as what we've seen right now, we've been really lucky. Projects Groups have been very lucky that none of our projects have been delayed or slowed down, put on hold. Construction still rolling on the projects that are in construction, design still rolling on the projects that are in design. We've seen a little bit of a slowdown in permitting, but for the most part, we're able to keep moving forward. We've got about 400 million in development going on right now, and we've had fewer than 10 cases across all those construction sites, cases of COVID-19 so far. About a month total delay in schedule, and maybe around $1 million in additional costs. But as this goes on, we understand case count's going to go up, schedule delays are going to increase, costs are going to go up. Folks are going to be coming back to job sites, or when they're not on job sites, they're going to be associating with other people, and so more folks are going to be getting sick. More people will miss work. We've seen a few cases where owners have seen a case pop up on the job site, and they've shut down the job for 2 weeks. And so that's actually where the schedule delay that I mentioned earlier came up. But for us as a business, Project Group's actually seen some new work come out of this, because we've been helping clients with their reopening strategy, because we understand that making sure that your tenants, your patrons feel safe, just as Peter said, that's going to be what drives having folks coming in. And the same is the case for your staff. You want to make sure that they feel comfortable if you're going to be asking them to come back into the office. And so we've been structuring new layouts for facilities that help with dedensification. We've been helping with some retrofits to HVAC systems, again, trying to make healthier air by improving filtration, increasing the amount of outside air, some mobile HEPA filters, that sort of thing. And then kind of quick turn things like improving touchless design, adjusting the way lobbies are working, changing the way you might do ticketing for an event, and then retro commissioning. So basically making sure that whatever equipment you've got is still operating the way it's supposed to be. And that's particularly key right now, because just as Peter said, things were shut down for 6 weeks. And so your air handlers, your elevators, all those things weren't being used all that much. They're designed to be used all the time. And now to improve circulation or to reduce the amount of folks in an elevator at a given time, all of that is running even more than it was originally expected. And so helping end users plan for that in their maintenance regime, that's been another key component for us so far. So a couple of things we probably would have expected, some delays here or there, but then seeing it as an opportunity to help folks, whether they're current or prior ones, with addressing how to reopen.
Yeah, if I could just jump in to add on to two things. The first is, in some sense, costs are going up. In another sense, if construction problem we put on hold, construction costs are going to come down, and we've already seen the cost of raw materials purchased and even steel are coming down. I think it's very reasonable to expect costs will be coming down as well. And so in some sense, you never want to say it's a positive that people's money, but from a budget perspective, that helps offset that. The other thing I want to say is that, John talking offices and lobby spaces, I think one of the big questions that is unanswered and unanswerable right now is what's going to be the long-term experience that we've all had working from home. And here we are on a webinar. This would have been in person. I know I'm on Zoom calls, all day, and I personally kind of fluctuate between, this is great because after this webinar, I'm going to go downstairs and have lunch with my wife, which I would not have otherwise done. On the other hand, I'm kind of over Zoom and I'm eager to get back to the office. So I don't really know whether this is going to mean a dramatic decline in demand for office space. It could mean that people are like running, screaming out of their houses, particularly if they have little kids that they've had to homeschool, get me back to work. And it could be that offices are going to have to decrease density, which is going to increase the need for space. So I think the office market, almost more than any other market, is very, very uncertain. This could be the best or the worst thing that ever happened to it.
I just want to kind of add on. This is a conversation that I have had multiple times with multiple building owners and property managers, is exactly along the lines of what you're discussing. I feel that based upon some of the feedback that I have been hearing from those individuals, I think we're going to kind of have a mix of things, which will be kind of interesting when this whole thing unfolds. I think that what you're going to see from what I'm hearing is I think you're going to get a lot of the larger companies that maybe have, three floors of 10,000 square feet of space for a total of 30,000 square feet of office space. You may see those companies go down to 5,000 to 7,000 square feet, because I think they have, for 30, 60, 90 days, their staff and their company was able to function at a high rate without everyone being present in the office. I think that they're going to realize that it's easier to almost kind of have like a flex interaction with staff, meaning we were kind of talking along the lines of, the possibility of once you go from 30,000 square feet to maybe 7 to 10, now you're going to flex those in-person meetings. I think you're going to continue to have forums and conversations and meetings, but I think you'll also have that flex opportunity to have that face-to-face interaction. There are some meetings which attest to that it's almost kind of vital to have in person. So I think that's where that kind of flex is going to come in the long-term sector of what we do. But I do think that you're going to see some density shifting with larger footprint companies that are, those 20, 30, 50,000 square foot facilities. I think you're going to see a reduction in square footage overall. And then I think your mid-sized companies, you may see some, but I do think we're going to have less people in the bill. I have the same reaction that you have, which is, yeah, it's fantastic. I'm a wife, I'm a mom, having that flexibility of walking with my kids is outstanding. And then I have those days where I'm like, I really kind of need to get out of this house. And I know I'm not alone. In that ideology. So it's going to be an interesting change, but it's definitely very uncertain, as you well described. I've just really enjoyed the conversations that I've had with some of those owners, and some concerns are vital, and then some of it is just unknown.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
I think just to glom on to I think that right now that everyone's been able to work effectively from home, I think it's going to take longer to figure out if that's really true, because the intangible benefit of casual interactions, running into someone in the hallway, spontaneously having a conversation, coming up with an idea, that's lost. And I guess we'll find out whether that really was valuable at all. But I think we're going to be figuring this out for the next few years.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is almost like an interactive so it's going to be interesting to see someone even mentioned to me, one of the building owners was like, what is the emotional and mental impact of having less interaction? And I was like kind of blown away by that statement. But there is something to be said for that, for sure. Thought that was kind of an interesting point. So, John, how do you see, gift hacks that we've just been discussing? How long do you expect it to see the full impact of COVID-19? Do you project, and how long after that do you think that we'll have kind of full recovery?
So I think the conversation that we were just having kind of highlights the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty here. And it's going to be an iterative process. It's going to take a little while. Last Thursday, I was watching a webinar on the North Texas construction market, and several panelists commented, we're out of the short-term effects. The market is coming back. I'm watching this webinar, and it was a great presentation, but I'm watching it, and at the same time, I've got my phone in my hand, watching stock market plummet. and case counts starting to skyrocket in, half the states in the country. And so, I think it's a little naive to think that we're really out of anything just yet. But that naivety, I think, is a bit exciting to me because it shows that we're ready. We're ready to find solutions to these issues as best we can and try to take a next step in our industry. And if I put it a little lightly, I think this has also given us the opportunity, setting COVID aside, it's given us the opportunity to have some profound conversations about issues regarding racism and bias that have been a part of, obviously, society, but also a little bit in our industry for a long time. I think Redbird Mall is a good example of that as well. So I think those conversations will help with Peter's work too. But as far as how long it might take to see the full impact, we're going to open up a little bit and cases will spike, and then we'll probably close up a little bit, and then we'll open and close up a little bit. It'll be a little bit iterative, and that'll be driven in large part by individual building owners, maybe a little bit by the government, but I think it's going to come more to what tenants are feeling comfortable doing and what staff are feeling comfortable doing. And because of that, you're going to be battling with consumer confidence for a while. I think even once there's a vaccine and medical treatment that we know works for this, it'll still take 5-6 months, probably more, for folks to start feeling more comfortable even after that's in place. And you've seen a lot of retailers that might have historically gone kind of holiday season to holiday season to decide, are we going to make it this year or not? This has obviously made that conversation come a little bit sooner. And they might have closed permanently, or they might have just sought bankruptcy protection to try to restructure. And obviously, as it relates to the commercial developer side of things, the building owner side of things, well, a lot of what they're trying to restructure, some of that is their rent. And that's obviously a big issue for the folks that have built all those facilities. And you've seen that. For example, Simon Property Group sued the gas companies for about $60 million in rent for April, May, and June. Food and beverage, pivoting a little bit, it's estimated that 12% of the restaurants in Texas that closed for COVID, they permanently closed. They're not going to be reopening. And multifamily is going to see some of that as well once payroll protection program and some of those other things start rolling off. So there's been a profound shift in the marketplace, and so it's hard to know what is full recovery. What does that actually look like? But as folks feel more comfortable, as there's more capital that starts being spent again, that will be when we're deciding, hey, are we coming back or are we not? And once that capital is being spent more on new development or redevelopment instead of just purchasing distressed assets, I think that's when we can say, all right, we're starting to move past this phase.
Yeah, if you want to see a perfect example of what John's talking about, which is using the bankruptcy filing to renegotiate rent, Neiman Marcus opened this enormous flagship store in New York City at Hudson Yards, and now they're going to close it, or it's looking like they'll close it. I mean, that has got financially devastating for Hudson Yards.
Yeah, there are some high-end locations that they have such a big footprint in nationwide in some of your more upper end affluent, areas that are going to make a serious dent. Yeah, that's for sure with what's going on with them.
Erica, we have a few questions.
Awesome. I was just about to ask you. I was going to say so. So Heather, I'm sure there's some of the questions that you have.
Excellent. Well, so this is going to be for Peter. And based on the commercial real estate environment that we're in today, how do you perceive the city issuing tax incentives that you've successfully navigated for Redbird?
Well, I feel fine about it. But I think what you have to remember is that the place where those, well, first of all, the tax incentives were put into place years ago, even before I bought Redbird. So they're already there. In terms of the subsidies and the incentives that we've gotten from the city, what you have to remember about the ones that are grants are not coming out of the city budget. They're coming out of bonds where the voters approved a specific amount for economic development or for some specific things that the grants are for. And so it's definitely not a situation where our receiving the money is taking away from the ability to fund social services and other city functions. Legally, they have to either use the money for its purpose or not use it. And you got to remember that the theory under which they're doing that is what we talked about before, which is that this is going to be catalytic. The city is looking for a very specific financial return on these investments that include the ability, first of all, requirement of how much we're investing, and then they have an expectation of this investment spurring investment in other places where there aren't going to be incentives given. And if we don't do what we're supposed to do, they have a lien on the property and they own it. So it really is an investment using dollars that were specifically allocated for these types of investments. And the city expects to make a return over the next 20, 25 years in terms of increased property taxes.
Great, thank you for that. I have another one for you, Peter, as well. Given the uniqueness of this development, what inspired you or spawned this idea to develop and organize this?
Well, what inspired it was that I had lived in Dallas for about 15 years, and woke up one day and said, I'm married to someone from Dallas. I have 3 kids who are now from Dallas. I don't know anything about the city. I really had been focused exclusively on career and family, and fairly self-centered. And so I started to get involved in the city, and that took me to Southern Dallas, and that's where I began to learn about the history of Southern Dallas and some of the things that I alluded to earlier. And I also began to that what I was seeing in Southern Dallas was very different from what I was hearing about Southern Dallas in North Dallas. And specifically, people would say things to me like, I'm afraid to go there. Are you afraid to walk to whatever building you're going to? And I was like, what do you think's occurring here? Like, there's no crossfire. There's, parents and kids going about their life. And sure, there are dangerous areas in Southern Dallas. There's also dangerous areas in North Dallas. In fact, the most dangerous area in North Dallas, in all of Dallas statistically, is the North Park parking lot. That has the highest crime rate in the city of Dallas. So, and nobody thinks twice about going there. So I just began to realize that there was a massive misperception. And then I began to read some books on it, and not surprisingly, particularly given that we're having as a country right now, it's race-based. I mean, this was an area that was intentionally starved for capital. It was made to be other. Things as simple as, why is LBJ 5 in North Dallas and 20 in Southern Dallas? Why is 75 called 75 in North Dallas and 45 in Southern Dallas? There were all these intentional steps to make the area seem different, seem scary, seem other. There were intentional steps taken to development. LBJ at 635, they got exits every mile or something, couple miles, and massive development has happened along those exits. I-20 goes miles and miles and miles and miles with no exits. That didn't happen by accident. And so it became both a a passion project, but also, as I said earlier, it became very apparent as I met more and more people in Southern Dallas that guess what? They wanted coffee. They would like to work closer to home. I mean, people in Southern Dallas, I mean, they commute long, long ways to get to work. They'd like to work close to where they live, just like people in North Dallas, market that had been basically disregarded by the broader market, and that if we could convince people that that was true, and we've been at this 5 years, these sorts of biases are not dispensed with easily. But as we've been able to do that, we can make money because the land was very inexpensive and the rents we're getting are attractive, because when people take the time to look into the market, these tenants realize either, wow, there's a lot of purchasing power here to buy a, or wow, I just did a census of my employees and 60% of them live within 5 miles of Redbird, and I'm making them drive out to Las Colinas. So now I got into it, and then once I figured out I wanted to do something like that, real estate was the obvious way to go. And you can't do this with a 10,000 square foot strip center. You got to do it in a major way to make a major statement and create an environment that reflects what you're trying to show. And so that off we went from there.
Great. Thank you so much for your contribution and the success there. Last question that I have here again for Peter is, what tenants or occupants do you still need? What are you looking for? And as commercial real estate practitioners, how can we help you?
Well, thank you very much for that question. I would say that the two things we're really looking for right now are office and restaurant. So we have a lot of office space. It adapts beautifully, and we are trying to repopulate the site. We've got a call center, although I always want to make sure it's a unique call center. We really didn't want call centers because they're not known for their terrific wages or working conditions, and we're trying to be uplifting. This one is really, unique. But between that and UT Southwestern and Parkland and Workforce Solutions, we're going to have about 1,500 people working on the site starting in early 2022. We need restaurants for them, and then we have more office space. I think a relatively small portion of the space is going to be interior retail for all the reasons we've talked about, and I think that'll happen after everything else has happened. So I would say those two plus the ever asked about grocery. We would love to have a grocery store because the area doesn't have any really high quality grocery stores.
Peter, kind of tying on to what Heather's last question was, where could anyone that's on the call today, where could we get marketing material for pad site information and details? Do you have a website that you can direct everyone to here?
I do. It's Redbird, REDBIRD -hyphen Dallas.com. And we've got the site plan, the renderings. My development partner is a guy named Terrence Maiden. His contact information is on there. He's doing a lot of leasing. And so come see us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Heather, did you have any other questions?
No, that's all we've got so far.
Okay, perfect. John, what do you see the single most active commercial business sector going forward?
It's a good question. It's tough because we've kind of touched on it a little bit, that there's so much that's in flux right now. But I sort of feel like multifamily is probably the most comfortable right now. Office, again, is so in flux for the reasons that Peter's already touched on. It's not too clear what will be happening there. Hospitality obviously took a big hit. Same with retail and food and beverage, and you can see that in the number of loans that aren't being paid back right now on hospitality projects and retail projects, about 19% on hospitality and 10% on retail. But as far as why it would be multifamily, from an end user perspective, you can avoid travel, but you have to live somewhere. You can avoid buying things in person, but you're going to need a place to sleep. You can avoid going out for meals, but you're still going to need to be able to cook. You need some place to live. It's essential. And so multifamily is still going to fit that bill. And then from an investor standpoint, 90.8% of residents made full or at least partial payments on their rent in the month of May. And that was only 2.2% worse than May 2019. So from a lender and developer perspective, there should still be a little bit more confidence in that marketplace. But again, there's going to be a lot of adjustment there because it's also the market segment where the developer kind of has to be in charge of whatever changes from a design or construction perspective are going to be done in that space to deal with the COVID issue. There's not some tenant business owner that's going to decide what the policies are going to be within the individual leased spaces. That's just whatever the tenant wants to do. So dealing with HVAC, dealing with elevator controls, to make the facility safe and sleek and make tenants feel like it's safe. Multifamily gives you a little bit of extra work here. So that's my two to hear Peter's thoughts as well on it.
Absolutely, Peter. We'd like to hear from you on the same question, what you see the commercial business sector going forward.
I'd have to agree. I would say multifamily, although I did worry before this happened that was overdone. The other thing I think is going to be medical. I think that this crisis has really put a spotlight on the fact that we need to come up with a better distribution model of medical services, that there are massive areas of cities that are very underserved, and you can see the difference in health outcomes. And I think this was happening anyway. In fact, I was on a panel a couple months ago called the retailization of healthcare. That healthcare systems are realizing that from a cost and a service perspective, it's much better to go out into the communities you want to serve rather than have everyone come to big hospitals. And that means that there's going to be a lot of leasing going on in those areas. Office is a big question mark. Hotel not recovering for a while, and so it's chiller medical.
Great answer, Peter. How will COVID-19 affect retail in the long term in office? What are your thoughts on retail and office?
Well, my and by the way, this is not an original thought, but I think that what COVID has done is accelerated trending otherwise. So retail was brick and mortar retail was shrinking and being forced to transform. That's on steroids now, and so I don't know exactly how that will look. I'll leave that to greater minds than mine. But it's going to what we thought was going to happen over the next 1 to 2 years, because desperate times call for desperate measures, and also I think another thing all of us learned during this thing, in addition to it's nice to go have lunch with your family and work from home, is you can get a lot on Amazon. You really don't need to go out to the store very much. So I think that trend has accelerated. I think the medical trend has accelerated. I just don't know on office. I just don't know whether it is going to accelerate working from home. You know, the whole thing about live, work, play is trying to find things that people can't do online and create environments around those activities so that people are going to a specific place. Well, if you take the work out of it, that's going to fundamentally change real estate. I just don't know whether the result of this is going to be that people realize they can do work online, or that they realize, God, I don't want to do work online. It's
Right.
I don't know.
Well, I would love to hear your feedback on the same, John. How do you think COVID-19 will affect retail and office in the long term?
Yes, I think what Peter said, I echo that. It's just exacerbating the issues that you were already seeing as far as retail is concerned. I think the only thing I would add is, in those rare instances where you feel like you need to go to a store for something, this is going to really drive home the importance of having good supply chain and stock management, so that you know exactly what's in your facility, and a potential purchaser knows, all right, they've got this shoe that I want, they've got it in the size and color that I want. Because if you say you've got it and you don't, then you've probably lost that customer long term, because folks are a little bit, at least right now, very apprehensive to go in store for things. And then office, again, 12% of workers don't want to return to the office at all. Most people want to be working 2 to 3 times from home each week, they think, but just as Peter said, it's going to adjust over time, so you don't know for certain. But 75% of CFOs expect to shift at least 5% of their previously on-site employees to permanently remote roles. And so you're going to see a little bit of friction there between what the company line might be and what individuals might be seeing. And because of that, I think, Erica, you touched on this a little bit previously, you're going to see leases potentially change a little bit. You're going to shift some square footage out from what a tenant might have to being more of a base building amenity, because if more staff members are going to be remote, in those rare opportunities where you'll need an assembly or an all-hands meeting, folks will need to have a place to gather where they're spaced out. But most of the time, they don't need to be paying for that square footage. And so the landlord can kind of take that on as another benefit to the facility. And then there's this other concept called Converge and Diverge. Again, not my idea, but basically, as you have schedules that firm up when people might be working remote or when they might be working in person, the line between what is one tenant's and what is another's might change a little bit. It might vary week to week, with good cleaning, of course. You could have certain portions of your floor that one week or one part of the week are tenant A and the rest of the time it's tenant B. So I think that's going to be part of what you'll see.
Yep.
Obviously, with the work that I do, it's a lot of interaction with AEC firms, owners, and property management firms. And so there's a lot of changes that you'll see in design and construction that will really just be accelerating some of what was already being seen in the past. But I know that we're close on time, so I'll take my engineer hat off and not go too far down that path for now.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Heather. Go ahead.
Sorry. We have one more quick question here, again for Peter, and this is somebody who drives by the property 3 to 4 times a week. Is that a hotel or apartment that's coming out of the ground on the southwest corner?
That's an apartment. That is a Class A apartment building being built by Palladium. What you see coming out of the ground is the structured parking garage, and we're very, very excited about it. It's going to be the only Class A amenity multifamily development anywhere in the area. It also has part of it set aside for workforce housing. So we're very, very excited about it.
Outstanding. Any other questions from anyone else? If you wanna go ahead and shoot over a couple of questions to Heather before we wrap up. Something that I just wanted to comment on from both of you, and you've both mentioned it throughout the call today, is just kind of tying back into where we are currently in regards to the current climate right now, in regards to equality and race relation conversations. I want to take a second and just to honestly commend you both for addressing that. This is something that I want to hear more of in the business sector, which is having those conversations, right? I think it's something that we have either neglected or just not felt comfortable enough to have in the workplace or in our professional environment. And I'm excited to hear more conversations in regards to addressing, areas that were, for lack of a better term, perhaps, racially segregated and racially profiled, and someone seeing a need base there and then addressing it many years ago. That was a conversation 5, 6, 8 years ago that there were most people not willing to have about that area and not willing to accept ownership of even saying that was even a true statement. Peter, which I'm sure you well were aware of 5, 6, 10 years ago, there were many people that were not willing to have that conversation. John, you brought up the repurposing of a KK, older building that is going to turn what was basically a source or an object of hate and turning it into a conversation forum. More of that needs to happen. I look for more of that to happen. I think it's very, very important that we continue to open that dialogue, have those conversations. I think sometimes people get uncomfortable asking certain questions. I think those questions have got to be asked. I think we have to address, why is that certain part of town seen in a certain light? Why is that building neglected? Why are we not utilizing land and space in different parts? Peter kind of addressed it earlier with, the going miles without an exit was not by accident, right? That was by design. And so we now have to take what we have today here and we really have to think about, how do we do better? All of us, how do we do better? And I think the start of that is by addressing it and having the conversations that we're having right now. John or Peter, would either of you like to?
John? Sure. Yeah, I appreciate the comment, and Erica, I think what you said is 100% the case. It's a conversation that's tough to have, and I pray that we don't have to have folks die to lead to this conversation again in the future. And the way to try to avoid that is to work on it together. And I'd love to share a little bit more information with you about that project in North Fort Worth. But I think it's going to have to be a process. It's going to need to take folks like Peter that know, hey, there is a business case here. There's a way for us to make some return, but there's also a great deal of social equity as well. So again, just appreciate being a part of the conversation today.
And I echo that, and then I would just say, maybe even more bluntly than before, I feel like we're at a point now where it is an obligation of white people to initiate these conversations. In some ways, my hat's off to the people who designed the systems that got us here, because they were very good at it, and the systems did exactly what they were intended to do. So from that perspective, they were well designed. The problem is that their design was their goal was was inhumane, to say the least. And so I think if we're ever going to get past this, we've got to name it. And it's particularly incumbent upon white people to name it, because African Americans have been naming it for a long time, and it hasn't been listened to or paid attention to, and it needs to be.
Very, very, very well said. If I can ask Heather if there are any other comments, feedback, any questions, any other questions on your side?
Erica, we do have one last question here, and it is again for Peter. How are you seeing doctors in their medical offices that are maybe going to be smaller or larger? Do you see that changing, more space or less space?
Boy, I gotta give you the I don't know. I know. I think we're gonna need more clinic facilities where it's not just a private doctor, but how the doctors are going to be doing their own clinics. I think we'll have to get a little bit bigger, just for spacing purposes. But other than that, I wish I had more of an expertise, but I don't.
Great, thank you both.
I would like to ask just one final question. We wrap up, and my question for both of you is: with the commercial practitioners that are here in the DFW area, you kind of touched it lightly on it, Peter. But John, is there anything that we as commercial practitioners can assist you your current projects? Is there anything that, if you would like to share with us going forward, either one of you, I would be happy to share any updates or anything that we can assist you with here at MetroTex through our newsletter that goes out to, 800 plus commercial practitioners. Is there anything that you would like to share really quickly on the call that any of us can assist you with, John?
That's a great question. That's Transform 1012 North Main project, the old KKK facility. The difficult thing that we're having right now is that there's a need there for a developer. There's a need there for capital to make that happen. And so there is a business case for it. Again, it doesn't have to just be, we want somebody that's got a drive for mission as well, but there is a business capability. And so if there are folks that are interested in having that conversation or interested in partnering.
Yeah, and
that would be great.
From my perspective, I would just encourage everyone to your definition of what's a good area to look at. When this city is marketed for office space, trying to attract out of town companies, the map starts at I-30 and goes north from there. Southern Dallas is literally not even on the map. I've seen it on the map. It's like it doesn't exist. And I would just encourage people, because there's so much opportunity there to buy land at versus and put up some first-class amenities that are very close to downtown and could really work, but are just overlooked. And I think that if everybody would look at that area with new eyes, I think it would help.
That's a great statement to make, and a great list to take as we have our conversations with our clients that are looking for development opportunities or construction opportunities. A great reminder, and I do appreciate that from both of you on your viewpoints. Gentlemen, it has been my pleasure today with you. I have enjoyed your insight and your expertise that you have shared with all of us today. We had some great questions coming from some of the practitioners. I do appreciate your time coming out of your busy days to do one extra Zoom call that you probably have on your day. So we do appreciate you. I will definitely be reaching out to both of you to get some additional information to add to our newsletter in the future. Definitely pay attention to that newsletter for updates and opportunities on both of their projects, the many projects that are working right now with both of these developers. Thank you, gentlemen, again, to everyone that took time out of your day to hear some amazing insight from both of these developers, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you again.
Thank you, gentlemen.